The massive alien ship appeared near Earth's orbital station without warning. Its hull shimmered with colors that human eyes had never seen before, stretching nearly 2 miles from end to end. Inside Horizon Station, Commander Jake Morrison watched the vessel through the observation deck with a mixture of wonder and caution. This was it. First contact with alien life, the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council. They sent a message in perfect English, which surprised everyone. They explained they had been watching Earth for decades, learning human languages and customs. Now that humanity had developed faster than light travel, it was time to make formal contact. They wanted to welcome Earth into the galactic community. Jake assembled his team in the main conference room. Dr. Lisa Hamilton, xenobiologist, couldn't stop smiling. She had spent her whole career hoping for this moment. Colonel Amy Price, the military advisor, stood with her arms crossed, looking less enthusiastic. President Andrew Carter appeared on the main screen from Washington. Watching everything carefully, the council delegation arrived in a smaller shuttle. When the airlock opened, Jake got his first look at real aliens. Ambassador Zelthrix led the group. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with blue skin that seemed to shift in the light. His forearms moved gracefully as he walked. Behind him came 5 other aliens, each from different species. One looked like a floating jellyfish. Another resembled a walking crystal formation. A third had fur and moved on 6 legs. "Greetings, humans of Earth," Zelthrix said. His mouth didn't move, but his voice came through clearly in English. "This is a momentous day. We represent the Galactic Council, a union of 847 species. We have maintained peace and prosperity for 12,000 years." Jake shook Zelthrix's offered hand. It felt warm and dry, almost human. "Welcome to Horizon Station. We're honored to meet you." The delegation settled into the conference room. Zelthrix activated a holographic display that filled the center of the table. Images of thousands of worlds appeared, connected by glowing lines. "This is council space," he explained. "These are our trade routes, our colonies, our homes, and soon Earth can join this great family." For the next 3 hours, Zelthrix presented what he called the Galactic Harmony Accords. It was essentially a treaty, laying out the terms of Earth joining the Council. Lisa took notes furiously. Amy's frown deepened with each passing minute. Jake listened carefully to every word. The benefits sounded incredible. Earth would gain access to technology that could cure diseases, extend human lifespans by hundreds of years, and provide unlimited clean energy. Humanity could use the Council's faster-than-light highways, making travel between stars as easy as driving between cities. Earth would receive protection from any hostile forces in the galaxy. But the requirements gave Jake pause. Earth would need to share all its technology with the Council. Human ships would need Council approval before traveling to new star systems. Earth would have to follow Council laws, even ones that might conflict with human values. Any new scientific discoveries had to be reported to Council authorities. Human expansion into space would be regulated and controlled. "These terms ensure harmony," Zelthrix said smoothly. "Every species makes these commitments. It's how we maintain peace across the galaxy." Jake glanced at his tablet where his legal team had been sending messages throughout the presentation. Their analysis was clear. This treaty would essentially make Earth a subordinate member of the Council, not an equal partner. Humanity would give up its sovereignty and its freedom to choose its own path. When Zelthrix finally finished, he produced a glowing tablet. "This is the treaty. Simply place your hand here, Commander Morrison, and Earth becomes part of something greater than itself." Jake looked at the tablet. He looked at his team. Amy shook her head slightly. Lisa seemed torn between excitement and concern. On the screen, President Carter watched with an unreadable expression. "No, thank you," Jake said quietly. The room fell silent. Zelthrix's blue skin seemed to darken. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." "No to what?" "No to the treaty," Jake said, standing up. "We appreciate you coming all this way. We appreciate the offer. But Earth isn't interested in joining the Galactic Council under these terms." The other aliens in the delegation began making sounds. Clicks, whistles, and tones that the translators couldn't interpret. Zelthrix raised two of his hands for silence. "Commander, perhaps you don't understand. This isn't really optional. All spacefaring species join the Council. It's how civilization works in the galaxy. I mean, maybe that's how it works for other species," Jake replied. "But humanity prefers to make its own choices. We'll chart our own course among the stars." "But the benefits," Zelthrix protested. "The technology, the protection, the knowledge we could share." "We'll develop our own technology," Amy said, speaking for the first time. "We'll protect ourselves. And we'll gain knowledge through our own exploration and research," Lisa added. "We're grateful for the opportunity to meet you. We'd love to establish diplomatic relations, engage in cultural exchange, maybe even trade. But we can't accept terms that would give up our independence." Zelthrix looked genuinely confused. "In 12,000 years, no species has ever refused council membership. Every civilization recognizes the wisdom of unity and cooperation under council guidance." "Then humanity will be the first to say no," President Carter said from the screen. "We mean no disrespect to the council or its members. But the people of Earth didn't struggle for thousands of years to achieve freedom and self-determination, just to surrender it to an external authority, no matter how well-intentioned." Jake walked toward the door, signaling the meeting was over. "You're welcome to stay and tour the station if you'd like. We can discuss trade possibilities or scientific collaboration. But the answer on council membership is no." The delegation left in stunned silence. As their shuttle detached from the station, Lisa came to stand beside Jake at the observation window. "Do you think we just made a terrible mistake?" she asked. "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but I know we made the right choice. Freedom matters more than convenience." Within hours, news of humanity's rejection spread across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings learned that a new species had done the impossible. They had told the Galactic Council no. Some found it amusing. Others found it insulting. Many found it deeply disturbing. On Horizon Station, Jake received his first communication from Earth's High Command. He expected praise for standing firm. Instead, the message was simple and ominous. "Prepare for consequences. The Council won't accept this quietly." Jake looked out at the stars, wondering what those consequences might be. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy, not with submission, but with defiance. There was no going back now. Whatever came next, Earth would face it as a free and independent world. That was worth any price. The High Assembly Chamber on Zentari Prime buzzed with agitation. Supreme Arbiter Thalmarin, a being who had guided the Council for 300 years, watched as representatives from 847 species argued loudly. His species, the Eternals, rarely showed emotion. But even he felt disturbed by the news from Earth. Dr. Lisa Hamilton sat in the observer's booth, watching through a holographic connection from Horizon Station. As Earth's appointed representative, she had no voting rights. The Council allowed her to witness their deliberations. What she saw worried her deeply. "This is unprecedented," shouted the Draxi representative, "a warrior species known for their military prowess. A primitive species rejects our generous offer and suffers no consequences. What message does that send to others?" The Cretar delegate, Zelthrix's superior, spoke next. "We must consider economic sanctions. Close Council trade routes to human ships. Deny them access to our technology markets. They'll reconsider quickly enough." A smaller species, the mouse-like Pippinic, squeaked through their translator. "Perhaps force is necessary. A brief military demonstration would show them the folly of independence." But not everyone agreed. Scholar Zindaria of the Vryn species stood up slowly. The Vryn were known for their wisdom and careful thinking. "Distinguished colleagues, perhaps we should pause and consider what humanity's rejection truly means. They developed faster than light travel independently. Only 6 other species in galactic history have accomplished this feat. Perhaps their technology works differently than ours." "Different doesn't mean better," snapped the Draxi representative. "Council technology has been perfected over millennia." "Has it?" Zindari asked mildly. "Or have we simply stopped innovating because everyone follows the same path?" I suggest we study humanity more carefully before taking drastic action. Supreme Arbiter Thelmarin raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that made everyone listen. The scholar raises valid concerns. However, we cannot ignore the political implications. If humanity remains independent and prospers, other species may question their council membership. The foundation of our galactic order could crack. On Earth, President Andrew Carter addressed the United Nations in New York. The vast chamber was packed with representatives from every nation. The world wanted answers about what would happen next. Yesterday, humanity made a choice, Carter began. We chose. Freedom over convenience. Independence over protection. The right to determine our own future over the certainty of following someone else's path. I know many of you are concerned about the consequences. So am I, but I believe we made the correct decision. He activated a display showing the Council treaty terms. Look at these requirements carefully. We would have been forced to abandon our quantum drive research because it doesn't match Council standards. We would have needed permission to establish colonies in our own region of space. Our laws, our culture, our very way of life would have been subject to external approval. That isn't membership. That's subjugation. Commander Jake Morrison watched the speech from Horizon Station. He had received dozens of messages in the past day from various council species. Some were threatening. A few were curious. One, from Scholar Zindari, was surprisingly supportive, though unofficial Colonel Amy Price entered the command center looking grim. We've got movement at the edge of the solar system. Council ships, at least 30 of them. They're setting up some kind of perimeter. Jake pulled up the tactical display. Sure enough, alien vessels were positioning themselves along the likely routes human ships would use to leave the solar system. They're establishing a blockade, trying to contain us. Colony ships, Lisa said with alarm. New Horizon and her sisters are scheduled to launch toward Alpha Centauri tomorrow. They'll run right into that blockade. Jake made a quick decision. Contact Captain Ryan Burke on New Horizon. Tell him to proceed as planned. If the Council wants to stop us, they'll have to explain their legal authority to do so. The blockade was commanded by Admiral Korth of the Draxi military fleet. From his flagship, he watched human activity in the inner solar system with professional interest. The humans were preparing ships for departure, apparently unconcerned by his presence. Either they were brave or foolish. Perhaps both. When the 3 colony ships approached his position the next day, Korth opened a channel. Human vessels, you are ordered to return to Earth's orbit. By authority of the Galactic Council, this region of space is now under protective observation. Captain Ryan Burke's face appeared on the communication screen. He was young for a ship captain, maybe 30 years old, with a calm confidence that reminded Korth of experienced warriors. Admiral Korth, with respect, what law are we breaking? Earth never agreed to Council jurisdiction. Unauthorized expansion into Council space violates galactic law, Korth replied. Council space? Burke asked. These star systems have no Council settlements or territorial claims. We checked your own public records. They're unclaimed and open to colonization under your own rules. Korth felt a flash of irritation. The human was technically correct. The Council claimed authority everywhere, but they couldn't actually claim every empty star system as territory. The spirit of the law is clear. You must return. No, Burke said simply. We're going to establish a colony on the 3rd planet of Alpha Centauri. If you want to stop us, you'll have to fire on unarmed civilian vessels. I don't think the Council wants that kind of publicity. The channel closed. Korth stared at his screens, unsure what to do. He could destroy the human ships easily, but Burke was right about the consequences. Attacking civilians would turn galactic opinion against the Council. He contacted Zentari Prime for instructions. The response came hours later and brought no comfort. He was to maintain the blockade, but avoid direct conflict. The Council was still debating how to handle the situation. On Earth, Colonel Amy Price coordinated the launch of 12 more colony ships. each headed toward a different star system in different directions. The message was clear. Humanity would not be contained by threats or blockades. Scholar Zendari arrived on Earth 3 days later on an unofficial visit. He wanted to understand humanity better. President Carter met him privately in Washington, with Commander Morrison present. Why? Zendari asked simply. Why refuse membership when it offers so much? Carter thought carefully before answering. Because we've learned something in our history. Freedom is more valuable than safety. The right to make our own mistakes is more important than the certainty of following someone else's correct path. We don't want to be protected and controlled. We want to be free and responsible for our own fate. Zendaria's large eyes blinked slowly. The council has grown rigid. I see that now. We've forgotten that species can thrive through different methods. Your rejection. It frightens the assembly because it challenges assumptions we've held for thousands of years. We don't want to destroy the council, Morrison said. We just want to exist outside it. Can't there be room in the galaxy for both? That's what I'm trying to convince the assembly, Zendari replied. But hardliners grow stronger every day. They see your independence as a threat that must be eliminated. Back at Alpha Centauri, Captain Burke's New Horizons slipped past the blockade, using stealth technology the Council didn't know humans possessed. The quantum drives Earth developed worked differently than Council engines, leaving no detectable signature. By the time Admiral Korth realized the colony ship was gone, it was already landing on New Terra, humanity's first extrasolar colony. When news reached the Council, the Assembly erupted in chaos. Humanity had outmaneuvered their blockade. Even worse, 11 other colony ships had successfully reached their destinations. Human expansion was happening regardless of Council approval. Supreme Arbiter, Marin realized the situation was spiraling beyond control. The Council faced a choice. Accept humanity's independence and risk encouraging other species to leave, or take military action and risk a war with an unknown enemy. Neither option was good, but a decision had to be made soon before the entire galactic order collapsed. Captain Ryan Burke stood on the surface of New Terra, looking up at unfamiliar stars. The colony ship New Horizons sat nearby, its engines cooling after the long journey from Earth. Around him, 300 colonists were already setting up the first human settlement beyond the solar system. The air was breathable, the water clean, and the land fertile. It was perfect. Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Council blockade. His communications officer called out. Admiral Korth wants to speak with you. Burke walked back to the temporary command center. On the screen, Admiral Korth's reptilian face looked even more frustrated than before. Captain Burke, you have violated Council space and established an unauthorized colony. This cannot be permitted to continue. Admiral, we've been over this, Burke said patiently. This system had no Council, presence, or territorial claims. We're not violating anyone's rights. We're violating the principle of galactic order, Korth snapped. Every species must follow Council regulations for expansion. It prevents conflicts and ensures peaceful development. We're not causing conflicts, Burke pointed out. We're settling on an empty world. The only conflict comes from the Council trying to control something that doesn't belong to them. Korth's expression darkened. You force my hand, human. Our fleet will arrive at your position in 6 days. I suggest you evacuate before then. The transmission ended. Burke looked at his second-in-command, Lieutenant Kevin Drake. What do you think? I think he's bluffing, Drake replied. The Council doesn't want a war, but they need to look strong, so they're making threats, Burke said. But we should prepare anyway. Contact Earth. Let them know what's happening. On Earth, President Carter received the news with concern. He called an emergency meeting with his top advisors. Commander Morrison, Colonel Price, and Dr. Hamilton gathered in the Situation Room beneath the White House. They're finally making their move, Amy said. We knew this was coming. Lisa looked worried. Can we really fight the Council? They have thousands of ships and technology that's been refined for millennia. We don't need to beat them, Jake Morrison said. We just need to make attacking us too costly to be worth it. Our technology is different from theirs. That gives us advantages they don't expect. Carter nodded. What's the status of our defense fleet? 30 ships ready for deployment, Amy reported. Not many compared to the Council, but they're equipped with our best technology. The quantum shields, adaptive weapons systems, and stealth capabilities that the Council doesn't have. Send 20 ships to New Terra, Carter decided. Keep 10 here to defend Earth, and launch those 6 new colony ships we've been preparing. The Council needs to understand that threatening one colony won't stop human expansion. Across the galaxy, the Council's actions were causing unexpected reactions. 3 minor species, the Sorin, the Kelthak, and the Mirren, sent secret communications to Earth. They were unhappy with Council regulations and wanted to discuss alternatives. Trade Minister Pelinera of the Sorin arrived on Earth claiming to be a tourist, but everyone knew the real purpose. My people produce the finest crystals in the galaxy, Pelinera explained in a private meeting with human trade officials. But Council regulations force us to sell through their trade networks at fixed prices. We make almost nothing. If we could trade directly with Earth, we're interested, said Commerce Secretary Helen Wright. But you understand that trading with us might anger the Council? Pelinara's tentacles quivered, which Lisa had learned meant amusement in Sorin body language. The Council is already angry. What more can they do? Anction us. They've been doing that for years in subtle ways. At least with Earth, we might find fair partners. Major Greg Foster, head of planetary defense, worked around the clock preparing Earth's military for possible conflict. The human approach to warfare was different from the Council's. Humans used smaller, faster ships working in coordinated groups. Their weapons were less powerful, but more accurate, and their tactics emphasized speed and unpredictability over raw strength. The Council fights like they negotiate, Greg explained to his officers. Overwhelming force applied gradually. They expect enemies to surrender when they see how outmatched they are. But we don't think like that. On New Terra, Captain Burke's colonists received unexpected visitors. A small ship landed near the settlement, carrying representatives of the Cleth, a pre-space flight species native to a nearby moon. The Cleth looked like upright walking bears with 6 arms and expressive faces. The lead Cleth, who identified himself as Velcro, spoke through a translation device. We've watched your ships in the sky. We wanted to meet you. According to Council law, humans should have avoided contact with pre-space flight species. There were detailed protocols about observation without interference. Careful study and eventual controlled first contact after the species developed certain technologies. It was meant to protect primitive cultures from being overwhelmed. Burke looked at Velcro and his companions. They seemed intelligent and curious, not primitive at all. We're humans from a planet called Earth. We've come to settle this world and live peacefully. Would you like to establish relations between our peoples? Velcro's eyes widened. You would treat us as equals? Even though we cannot travel between stars? Why wouldn't we? Burke asked. You're intelligent beings. You have a right to meet other species and choose your own path. This decision would have massive consequences. When the Council learned that humans had made direct contact with the Cleth, violating the Prime Contact Directive, it gave hardliners exactly the justification they needed. This wasn't just about human independence anymore. It was about protecting galactic laws and primitive species from human. Recklessness Supreme Arbiter Thalmarone called an emergency session of the High Assembly. The humans have now violated one of our most sacred laws. The Prime Contact Directive exists to protect vulnerable species. We cannot allow this to continue. Skala Zendari tried to argue. The Cleth don't seem harmed by contact. Perhaps our directive is too restrictive. The law is the law, shouted the Draxi representative. I move for military authorization to restore order in human-occupied space. The vote was close, but the hardliners won. The Council authorized Admiral Korth to use force to disable human ships and return them to Earth's solar system. No lethal force was permitted, but the message was clear. The galaxy would not accept human defiance. Admiral Korth received his orders with mixed feelings. He was a warrior, but he wasn't sure this was a just cause. Still, orders were orders. He assembled a fleet of 200 ships from 12 different Council species. It was overwhelming force designed to make resistance impossible. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral of Earth's Defense Fleet, received intelligence about the Council's plans. 20 human ships couldn't defeat 200, but they didn't need to win. They just needed to prove that attacking humanity had real costs. Here's the plan, Jake explained to his captains via secure communication. We don't engage in a direct battle. We use hit-and-run tactics. Strike at their vulnerable points and disappear before they can respond. Make them chase shadows. The goal is to frustrate them and make them question whether this war is worth fighting. Captain Linda Shaw, commanding the USS Freedom, smiled grimly. So we're going to be annoying? Exactly, Jake confirmed. We're going to be the most annoying species the Council has ever encountered. When Admiral Korth's fleet arrived at New Terra, they found the colony defended by 20 human ships. The Council vessels spread out in standard battle formation, a show of overwhelming power. Korth opened a channel to the human fleet. This is Admiral Korth of the Galactic Council. You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted back to Earth. Resistance is futile. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on screen. Admiral Korth, we're not surrendering. If you fire on us, we'll defend ourselves. You have 20 ships, Korth said. We have 200. Be reasonable. Numbers aren't everything, Morrison replied. Last chance to turn back peacefully. Korth cut the transmission and gave the order to advance. His fleet moved forward in perfect formation, weapons charging. The human ships scattered in all directions, moving with incredible speed. Korth's sensors lost track of half of them immediately. Then the attacks began. Small human fighter craft appeared from nowhere, swarming around Council cruisers. Their weapons weren't powerful enough to destroy the larger ships, but they targeted specific systems. Engines, sensors, weapons arrays. The human fighters worked in perfect coordination. Overwhelming point defense systems. A Council destroyer suddenly went dark, its power systems disabled by precise strikes. Then another, and another. The human ships vanished before Korth's forces could target them effectively. Captain Shaw's USS Freedom demonstrated technology that shocked the Council. When a Draxi battlecruiser fired at her ship, Freedom's shields didn't just absorb the energy. They adapted, changing frequency to match the incoming weapons. The second shot did even less damage than the first. The battle near New Terra continued for 6 hours. But it wasn't really a battle. It was a demonstration of how different human warfare was from Council expectations. Admiral Korth watched in growing frustration as his massive fleet struggled to land a single hit on the smaller human vessels. The human ships moved like water, flowing around Council formations and striking where defenses were weakest. They didn't try to destroy Council vessels, just disable them. One by one, Council ships went dark, their crews unharmed, but their systems offline. It was humiliating. When one Draxi captain got frustrated and fired a full weapons burst at a human fighter, Captain Linda Shaw's USS Freedom responded instantly. The Freedom didn't fire back with weapons. Instead, it sent out some kind of electronic pulse. The Draxi ship's entire weapons system shut down, followed by its propulsion. The massive vessel drifted helplessly in space.
Ow! Did they do that?
Korth demanded of his technicians. Unknown, Admiral, came the frightened reply. Their technology operates on principles we don't understand. Our systems can't defend against something we can't detect. Admiral Morrison opened a channel to Korth. Admiral, we've disabled 18 of your ships without killing anyone. We can keep doing this all day. Or you can withdraw and avoid further embarrassment. Korth's pride warred with his common sense. He had never retreated from a battle in his life. But this wasn't a real battle. His fleet was being dismantled by an enemy they couldn't even target properly. Finally, he gave the order to fall back. As the Council fleet limped away to regroup, Morrison sent a message to Earth. First, engagement successful. No human casualties. Council forces withdrew. But they'll be back with a new strategy. The news of the Battle of New Terra spread across the galaxy within hours. The mighty Galactic Council had been forced to retreat by a species with just 20 ships. The reaction was swift and varied. Some species were shocked. Others were secretly pleased to see the Council taken down a notch. A few began quietly questioning whether Council membership was really necessary. On Zentari Prime, Supreme Arbiter Thulmarine faced a crisis. The High Assembly was in chaos. Hardliners demanded escalation, calling for the full Council military to crush humanity. Moderates urged negotiation, arguing that humanity had proven they could defend themselves. Scholar Zindari stood before the Assembly and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. Honored members, we stand at a crossroads. For 12,000 years, the Council has maintained order through overwhelming power and absolute authority. We assumed this was the only way civilization could function. But humanity proves otherwise. They prove only that they're dangerous, interrupted the Draxi representative. No, Zendari continued. They prove that independence and cooperation are not opposites. They prove that species can be free and still respect others. They prove that our way is not the only way. If we destroy them for teaching us this lesson, what does that say about us? The debate raged for days. Meanwhile, 6 more species contacted Earth requesting separate diplomatic relations outside Council channels. The Soren weren't alone in their dissatisfaction. Younger species especially felt constrained by Council regulations that favored older, established powers. On Earth, President Carter and his advisors prepared for what might come next. Major Greg Foster reported that planetary defenses were as ready as they could be. Colonel Amy Price had coordinated with the scattered human colonies to establish a network of mutual support. Dr. Lisa Hamilton had an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Zelthrix arrived on Earth unannounced, requesting a private meeting. They met in a secure location in Geneva. I owe you an apology, Zelthrix said without preamble. When we first met, I assumed human rejection of Council membership was based on ignorance or pride. I was wrong. You understood something we forgot long ago? What's that? Lisa asked. That submission isn't the same as cooperation. That unity doesn't require uniformity. That civilization can exist in many forms, not just one. Zelthrix looked tired. The Council has become rigid. We offer membership as if it's a gift, but it's really a demand. Join us or be isolated. Your species chose a third option. Neither joining nor isolation. Just independence with openness to cooperation. So what happens now? Lisa asked. That depends on whether wisdom or fear wins in the Assembly. If fear wins, you'll face the full might of the Council military. Every ship, every weapon, all focused on making an example of humanity. If wisdom wins, Zelthrix paused. If wisdom wins, perhaps we can find a new way forward. Back on New Terra, Captain Burke's colony was thriving. The Cleth visited daily, fascinated by human technology and culture. The humans learned about Cleth history and customs in return. It was exactly the kind of equal exchange the Council's Prime Contact Directive was meant to prevent. Why does the Council want to control first contact so carefully? Velcro asked Burke one evening as they shared a meal. They say it's to protect less advanced species from being overwhelmed, Burke explained. They think contact should happen slowly and carefully. We're not overwhelmed, Velcro pointed out. We're excited. We're learning. Why would anyone think we need protection from knowledge and friendship? Burke smiled. That's a good question. Maybe the Council's rules are more about control than protection. This conversation was being monitored by Council observers, of course. Every human action was watched and reported. The hardliners used it as evidence that humans were reckless and dangerous. The moderates used it as evidence that Council policies needed reform. Admiral Korth received new orders. The Council was sending reinforcements. 500 more ships would join his fleet. This time, they would use overwhelming force and new tactics designed specifically to counter human advantages. The Council was bringing every weapon they had. On Earth, Admiral Morrison studied the intelligence reports with concern. 500 ships. Even with our technology, we can't fight that many. We don't need to, President Carter said firmly. We just need to make them think twice about attacking. Amy Astod Carter pulled up a star map. We have colonies on 15 worlds now. The Council can't attack all of them simultaneously. If they come at us, we hit them everywhere else. Make this too costly, too complicated, too messy. They want a quick, clean victory. We make sure there's no such thing. The strategy was risky. It meant spreading human forces thin and relying on speed and unpredictability rather than strength. But it was the only option that didn't involve surrender or certain defeat. Supreme Arbiter Thelmarin made an unexpected decision. Before authorizing the new military campaign, he would meet with human leaders personally. If war was inevitable, he wanted to understand his enemy first. He sent a message to Earth requesting a meeting on neutral ground. President Carter, Admiral Morrison, and Dr. Hamilton traveled to meet Thelmarin on a small, uninhabited moon halfway between Earth and Centauri Prime. The meeting took place in a temporary structure set up just for this purpose. Thelmarin was ancient. His species long lived beyond human comprehension. He moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. President Carter, I wanted to meet the leader of the species that has caused such disruption in our galaxy. We didn't seek disruption, Carter replied. We only sought freedom. Freedom, Thelmarin repeated, a word every species values until they must balance it against security, prosperity, and peace. The Council offers all these things. Why is freedom more important? Because without freedom, the rest doesn't matter, Carter said. What good is security if you have no choice in how you live? What good is prosperity if someone else decides what you can do with it? What good is peace if it requires surrendering who you are? But chaos is the alternative, Thelmarin argued. Without Council authority, species will war with each other. Strong will dominate weak. The galaxy will return to the Dark Ages before the Council brought order. Admiral Morrison spoke up. That's only true if you assume species can't cooperate without being forced to. We think differently. We think beings can work together voluntarily, respecting each other's sovereignty while still pursuing common goals. You're idealistic, Thelmarin said. Idealism rarely survives reality. Maybe, Carter acknowledged, but we'd rather fail trying to be free than succeed at being controlled. That's not idealism. That's just being human. The meeting lasted hours. Thelmarin asked questions about human history, culture, and motivations. He seemed genuinely trying to understand. Finally, as the meeting ended, he said something that surprised everyone. I will delay the military campaign for 30 days. In that time, I will propose a new category of status to the Assembly. Independent partner state. Species who maintain sovereignty but cooperate with the Council on mutual interests. No obligations beyond respecting basic laws against genocide and similar atrocities. No forced technology sharing. No required membership. Would the Assembly accept that? Lisa asked. I don't know, Thelmarin admitted, but I think it's worth trying. Your species has reminded us that there are other ways to organize civilization. Perhaps it's time we remembered our founding principles. The Council was created to prevent war and promote cooperation. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that cooperation means choice, not compulsion. As the human delegation returned to Earth, they carried hope that war might be avoided. But they also knew that 30 days wasn't much time, and the Council hardliners would fight any change to the existing order. The next month would determine whether humanity's defiance led to a new era of galactic freedom or too devastating. War? The 30 days supreme arbiter, Thelmarin promised, turned into the most intense month in galactic history. On Centauri Prime, the High Assembly debated constantly. The proposal for independent partner state status divided the Council in ways nothing had in thousands of years. Scholar Zendari worked tirelessly to build support. He met with representatives from hundreds of species, arguing that flexibility would strengthen the Council, not weaken it. Some listened. Many didn't. The Draxi and their allies saw any compromise as surrender. On Earth, President Carter prepared for both possibilities. If the Council accepted the compromise, humanity would have won something unprecedented. If they didn't, war was coming. Admiral Morrison coordinated with military commanders across all 15 human colonies, preparing defensive strategies. Something unexpected happened in the second week. The Sorin officially withdrew from the council and declared themselves independent. Trade Minister Pellinara made the announcement from Earth, standing beside President Carter. The Sorin people have watched humanity stand for principles we thought impossible. We choose freedom over comfort. We choose independence over protection. The announcement shocked the galaxy. Within days, 2 more species followed. The Miran, an aquatic species tired of council regulations on ocean world colonization, declared independence. The Kelthak miners, who resented council control over resource extraction, did the same. The council hardliners panicked. This was exactly what they feared. Humanity's example was inspiring rebellion. The Draxi representative demanded immediate military action against all independent species. We must crush this uprising before it spreads. But Thalmarin saw opportunity instead of crisis. Perhaps the uprising exists because our policies created dissatisfaction. Perhaps reform is better than suppression. Dr. Lisa Hamilton reported from Zentari Prime, where she watched the debates. It's getting ugly. The assembly is splitting into 2 factions. Reformists who want to accept change, and traditionalists who want to maintain absolute control. I'm not sure which side will win. On New Terra, Captain Burke's colony received more visitors from the Cleth. Velcro brought news that his people's ruling council wanted formal relations with humanity. We've decided we want to join the wider galaxy. But we want to do it on our own terms, not as subjects of some distant council. You ready for that? Burke asked. Maybe not fully, Velcro admitted. But when will we be ready if we never start? Your species developed space travel on your own. You didn't wait for permission. Why should we? The Cleth decision added another layer to the debate. Here was a pre-space flight species actively choosing to engage with the galaxy outside council control. It challenged one of the council's most fundamental policies. Major Greg Foster on Earth perceived intelligence that made him nervous. The council's military fleet was mobilizing regardless of the political debates. Admiral Korth had 700 ships now, positioned throughout the region. Whether for intimidation or actual attack, the buildup was massive. Colonel Amy Price worked with planetary defense forces day and night. If they come in force, we can't stop them all. Our best hope is making the costs so high, they give up. That's been our plan all along, Greg replied. Question is whether they're willing to pay the price. The crisis point came on day 25. The High Assembly held a formal vote on Thelmaran's proposal for independent partner state status. The chamber was packed with representatives, observers, and media from across the galaxy. The debate lasted 12 hours. The Draxi representative made an impassioned speech. We stand at a precip. Ice. If we allow species to remain independent, the council becomes meaningless. Why would anyone follow our rules if there's no requirement to do so? This path leads to chaos and the end of civilized order. Scholar Zindari responded with equal passion. We stand at a crossroads. We can cling to old ways and force compliance through violence, or we can evolve into something better. True civilization doesn't require submission. It requires respect. If species choose to work with us voluntarily, isn't that more meaningful than forced cooperation? The vote was close. 423 in favor. 424 against. The proposal failed by a single vote. The traditionalists had one. The council would not officially recognize independent status, but something unexpected happened. Supreme Arbiter Thalmarin stood and addressed the assembly. I have served the council for 300 years. In that time, I believed I was promoting civilization and order. Today I realize I've been promoting control and stagnation. The vote has failed, but I have not. He turned to the observer section where Lisa Hamilton sat. Earth, Sorin, Miran, and Kelthak representatives. I recognize you as independent partner states. I don't have assembly approval, but I have the authority of my office. The council may remove me for this decision, but it's the right decision. The chamber erupted in chaos. Half the assembly shouted in outrage. The other half cheered. The Draxi representative immediately moved to remove Thalmaren from his position. But before the vote could happen, something remarkable occurred. One by one, species began standing and announcing they also recognized the independent states. Not withdrawing from the council, but simply acknowledging that other forms of civilization were valid. It started with a few minor species, then larger ones joined. Within an hour, over 200 council members had made similar declarations. The council was fracturing, but not in the catastrophic way hardliners feared. It was evolving, becoming something more flexible and inclusive. The old absolute authority was gone. In its place, something more democratic was emerging. Admiral Korth received orders to stand down. With the political situation so uncertain, military action would be disastrous. His fleet withdrew from human space. The immediate crisis was over. 5 years passed. Captain Linda Shaw now commanded humanity's first deep space exploration vessel, the USS Endeavour. Her mission was to explore beyond council space. Mapping new regions and making contact with undiscovered species, she stood on the bridge as her ship jumped too faster than light speed, leaving known space behind. "It's strange to think how much has changed," she said to her first officer. "Because we said no to the council?" He asked. "Because we refused to accept that there was only one way to exist in the galaxy," Linda corrected. "That opened the door for everyone else to make real choices." On Earth, Admiral Morrison had retired from active service. He taught at the new Galactic Relations Academy, training the next generation of diplomats and officers. In his lectures, he always emphasized one point. Humanity didn't reject diplomacy. We rejected subordination. That distinction mattered. New Terra had grown into a thriving world with 300,000 human colonists and a Cleth population of 50,000. The two species lived together, worked together, and built something neither could have created alone. It was proof that cooperation didn't require one species to dominate another. On Zentari Prime, the council had been transformed. Scholar Zendari served as the new supreme arbiter, elected on a platform of reform. The assembly now included a new category of members: full members who accepted all council authority, and associate members who cooperated on specific issues while maintaining sovereignty. 60 species had chosen associate status, including several longtime council members. The change wasn't without problems. Coordination was harder. Decisions took longer. But the council was more representative and more legitimate than ever before. Thalmaren had retired after his controversial decision. Some called him a hero who saved the council by changing it. Others called him a traitor who destroyed galactic order. He didn't seem to care about either label. He lived quietly on a small planet, studying human culture and philosophy. President Carter finished his term and returned to private life. His last act as president was signing mutual defense treaties with 30 independent species. Not a unified military alliance, but a network of voluntary cooperation. It wasn't as strong as council protection. It was built on respect rather than compulsion. Dr. Lisa Hamilton continued as Earth's chief ambassador to the council. She worked to build bridges between independent species and council members. It was difficult work. Old prejudices died hard. But progress was happening. The galaxy was messier now, more complicated. No single authority controlled everything. Disputes had to be negotiated rather than dictated. It was slower and more frustrating than the old system, but it was also more alive. New ideas flourished. Different approaches to technology, culture, and organization competed and cross-pollinated. Species learned from each other as equals rather than as teachers and students. The human colonies numbered 50 now, scattered across dozens of star systems. Each developed its own character, while remaining connected to Earth and each other. Some focused on scientific research, others on agriculture, mining, or trade. Several had significant populations of non-human residents, who chose to live in human space rather than council territory. Trade between independent species and council members grew steadily. The Sorin crystals that once went through council channels now traded freely, making the Soren people wealthy. Celtic mining operations supplied materials to both council and independent worlds. The Mirrans shared their aquatic technology with anyone interested. Humanity's unique technologies became hot commodities. The quantum drives that left no detectable signature. The adaptive shields that learned from incoming attacks. The stealth systems that made ships invisible to council sensors. Earth didn't give these away, but they licensed them to trusted partners, creating an economic network that rivaled the council's. Some council hardliners still resented humanity. They blamed Earth for weakening the galactic order. A few species refused all contact with independent states, but most recognized that the galaxy had changed, and fighting change was futile. On a space station near the galactic core, an unusual meeting took place. Human, Soren, Cleth, and council representatives gathered to discuss a new threat. A previously unknown hostile force was attacking outlying settlements, threatening both independent and council worlds. Instead of arguing about jurisdiction or authority, the representatives worked together to coordinate a response. Council military forces would secure one region. Human stealth ships would gather intelligence. Soren early warning networks would track hostile movements. It was messy and improvised, but it worked. After the meeting, the council military commander, a young Varin officer named Nelkira, spoke with the human representative. My grandfather was Scholar Zendari. He told me once that humanity taught the galaxy an important lesson. I didn't understand what he meant until now. What lesson? The human asked. That civilization isn't about control. It's about trust. The council spent thousands of years trying to control everyone to prevent conflict. You showed us that trust and cooperation can work without control. It's riskier, but it's also more real. The human smiled. Your grandfather was wise, but we didn't teach that lesson alone. The council learned it by being willing to change. That took courage too. Back on New Terra, Captain Burke had become the colony's governor. He stood at the memorial to the colony's founding, where a simple plaque read, "Here humans and Cleth built something new together." Not because they were forced to cooperate, but because they chose to. May all who follow remember that choice is the foundation of true civilization. Velcro joined him at the memorial. The Cleth leader was older now, his fur graying. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Saying no to the council must have been terrifying. It was, Burke admitted. But some things are worth the terror. Freedom is one of them. We're grateful, Velcro said. Not just for the technology or the trade, for treating us as equals when you didn't have to. For showing us that we had the right to choose our own path. That's what humans do best, Burke replied. We question authority. We challenge assumptions. We insist on our right to make our own mistakes. It's not always the smart choice, but it's our choice, across the galaxy. Humanity's legacy wasn't dominance or superiority. It was the simple but revolutionary idea that civilization could exist without submission, that cooperation was better when voluntary, that trust mattered more than control. The galaxy was messier now, but it was also freer. And in that freedom, new possibilities flourished that the old order never imagined. Species that once followed orders now made choices. Cultures that once conformed now expressed themselves. Ideas that once needed approval now competed openly. It wasn't perfect. There were conflicts and problems that the old council might have prevented, but there was also innovation, diversity, and genuine cooperation that absolute authority had stifled. Humanity hadn't destroyed the Galactic Council. They had forced it to evolve or become irrelevant. In doing so, they had given every species in the galaxy something precious, the right to choose Thai.